Welcome to Finlos Lives. It's been a bit, and so I kind of thought that I would talk about what's been keeping me away from recording new episodes. As I mentioned in the last episode, I recently started a new job. It's been really tough to leave the classroom, I have to admit. I miss it, I miss the kids, I miss the work, and I have been struggling with feelings of being a sellout or giving up any sort of opportunity to make the positive changes that educators are often believed and really do. On top of that, when you start a new job, you also have to rebalance the way that your time is spent. And so what I wanted to talk about in this episode is the balancing act that each of us has to perform each day, and how often we don't give ourselves the credit for doing that. Whether or not we think we're successful is a completely different question, and I think that that's one that we are often way too hard on ourselves about. But I do think that it's a worthy use of time to sort of examine how I have had to readjust recently to having new work, to working from home, to making sure that my personal juggling act remains intact so that life can continue safely and securely and in an emotionally and physically stable way. So stick around, and I hope that you enjoy this discussion. Before I go any further, just a quick programming note. If there's any difference in quality or if my voice sounds a little bit different, it's been about 2 weeks since that initial introduction that I just recorded or that you just heard. And in that time, I was pretty sick for about a week. And so I'm recovered now, and the nasally sound of my voice has mostly cleared to its normal nasal level. So we're going to get back to the show now. And to pick up where I left off, I am going to continue that metaphor of juggling as an analysis or as a means of analyzing how most people, if not everyone, really lives day to day. And as I was thinking about this, honestly, I developed a much higher regard and level of respect for jugglers, for the skill that is required. But as we talk about metaphoric juggling, I'm going to use my own experiences to sort of analyze what I would assume is just an average experience. And so when I'm talking about juggling in a daily life, or in my daily life, here's just a short list, which includes work, parenting, partnering, paying bills, minding my health and well-being, caring for pets, maintaining our home, daily chores, cooking, partaking in hobbies, and even maintaining other relationships. And that's just a short list. There's more that I could talk about, but that's pretty much the common ones that I think most people could relate to. And some of these, like partnering or home maintenance and chores, some of those are shared. But regardless of if they're shared or if they're solely my own realm of maintenance, it still occupies a certain amount of headspace on any given day. And we have the common cliche of multitasking, and the reality is that most of us are trying to balance all of these different attention-grabbing needs. But the more that we're trying to do at any given time, the less efficient and the less effective we are at doing any one of those given things. So, what might some of these things look like for different people? I mean, parenting does not necessarily look the same for a man as it does for a woman. And obviously, there's some problematic binary language there, but that's what I'm going to use for the time being. Work does not necessarily take the same energy for me as it does for a disabled person, or a queer person, or a black person. Obviously implying that for them, there's much more risk and much more energy involved in maintaining their equilibrium. And I think it's that intersectionality that really makes this such an important and complicated conversation to have, because there is no one-size-fits-all discussion of what each of our own individual juggling acts looks like. And then, just to complicate things a little bit more, I'm going to also add a wrinkle to our metaphor here. We've all seen the jugglers who juggle balls, and then there's the jugglers who juggle knives or blades or some sort of sharp object. And I think that is an appropriate thing to think about when we're looking at our own lists of things that we juggle. And in the time that I've been speaking, I'm hoping that you have sort of done the mental activity of listing out your own things that you're juggling at any given time or any given day. And if you haven't, go ahead and do so. And then let's have some fun and categorize those things into balls and knives. The balls are the things that you can juggle, and if you happen to drop one, things are going to be a little bit difficult for a bit, but you can pick up the ball and you can keep juggling. Knives are the things that if you're juggling and you drop one, or if you miss it, you can hurt yourself, or you can cause some serious damage. And so when we're talking about bills, for example, bills are extremely important, but if you miss one bill, it's going to be stressful and it's going to have some cascading effects. But chances are, if you get on it, if the power goes out, I've been guilty of this. I've neglected a power bill or utility bill. Thankfully, called the utility company, paid the bill. A couple hours later, it came back on. That's assuming, that one has the privilege and the financial stability to do something like that. Those are balls. You can drop the ball, pick it up, and keep going. But when we're talking about knives, these are things like work or maintaining healthy relationships with our partners or our children. If we drop a knife while we're juggling, those can cause long-term or irreparable harm. And, as I was talking about before, to make it more complicated, we're all juggling balls and knives, but then if you look at the intersectionality of who you are, how is your juggling act made more complicated? Are you part of the queer community? Are you a person of color? Are you a woman? Do you have accessibility issues or difficulties? What that does is not only are you juggling, but you are juggling on a unicycle, or you're juggling over a pit of fire. We use whatever image you'd like. You're juggling on one leg. It just makes things more complicated. And so I think it's a really healthy thing to take some time to consider your own personal juggling act and give yourself some praise and some pats on the back for just making it through today. You might have dropped some balls or almost dropped a knife, but you're here, and congratulations. And that is something to be proud of. That is something worthy of praise. And what I think that this also does is it allows us to empathize a lot more with those around us, because nobody's juggling act is the same, and our juggling acts change from day to day. And I think that if we keep that in mind, if we remember that nobody's doing exactly the same thing or has the exact same set of difficulties or complexities, then I think we can empathize a little bit more. Of course, though, as we are talking about these intersections of forms of oppression and how they complicate our own individual juggling acts, it is also important to consider the privileges that we have, because privileges have the opposite effect. They decrease the difficulty of our daily juggling acts. And this really came home or hit home for me a few years back. I was in Jacksonville for a training, and it was at a very fancy private school that was right on the St. John River, and it was this gorgeous Spanish mission style campus. Everything was pristine and clean, it was just an absolutely gorgeous campus. And on one of our lunch breaks, I remember observing the students there, and they were all just perfect. I mean, lean, fit, happy, healthy. There was not a single I'm struggling not to focus on body image stuff, but they were tanned and well put together, and they weren't wearing uniforms, but everybody was just dressed impeccably. So there's obviously some wealth there beyond the obvious of them just being in a private school. But what really struck me was how in shape every single student was. And that's really where I kind of developed a very clear understanding of what privilege looks like, because what privilege gives you is time. And if we're talking about wealth, if we're talking about gender, if we're talking about race or ethnicity, whatever the advantage that you're identifying as being a source of privilege, ultimately what it does is it removes obstacles, it removes barriers, it removes stressors, it removes anything that diminishes your ability to live your life the way that you want to live it and the way that you want to experience it. And what a privilege it is to have time to exercise and to not worry about the quality of the food that you're going to eat, or stress about bills, or be afraid at all, to be afraid. And privilege is time. This came up in a conversation at work just today. Somebody was mentioning a particular celebrity and how youthful they look despite their age. And this is a celebrity who advocates against, surgeries and things like that, and talks about just healthy lifestyles. And I just had to laugh, because with that privilege that this person is talking about, that time and that not having to deal with stress, what does that mean? This is private cooks, and drivers, and nannies, and maids, accountants, and personal assistants. All of those people who are there to tend to all of the little things that I and you have to tend to on any given day, of course, things would be so much easier. I mean, even if you don't have those stereotypical hallmarks of privilege, how often are you able to sever your work from your personal life? How much time do you spend thinking or worrying about bills or wondering when you'll be able to get a newer car, or fretting about an appliance breaking, or having the chance to even consider where your next vacation will be if you get a vacation? It's just privilege makes juggling life's responsibilities easier and safer, and may even allow people to hire others to do that juggling for them. I say all this in a roundabout way to come back to where I started, which is where I've been for the past few weeks, maybe past couple of months. I left the classroom, and I love teaching. I love my students. I miss them, and I miss those experiences and those relationships. I miss all of that. But as I've been readjusting my life to not having to account for all of those others in such an intensive way, I have been starting to reallocate some of my time in ways that are healthier for me. And I think that's okay for a little bit. I'm not saying I'm never going to go back to teaching, and I'm not saying that what I'm doing now is like the forever thing, but I'm a little bit less stressed, and I've got a little bit more time, and I think that's okay. And my juggling is a little bit easier right now. And so that's where I'll leave that. Thank you for listening in to this episode of Finlos Lives. It is my full intention to get back onto a regular recording schedule, and I hope that you'll tune in. I just recorded a new interview yesterday with somebody who is very dear to our family, so I should be posting that episode within the next couple of days. I'm actually working through the editing. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this summer. I hope that you are taking stock of all of your successes and giving yourself the praise that you deserve for being a juggler too. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them on my social media, or you can email them to me at finloslives@gmail.com, or you can leave me a voicemail via the SpeakPipe app at finloslives.com. I look forward to talking to you again soon.